of the Christ.
I already did that.
Who has not yet done their presentation?
That would be me.
It's you. Sir, are you today?
Oh my God.
We signed you? But you're the last two, right? That should finish everybody up?
I think so.
Well, Macy.
Macy, okay.
I just don't think she's going.
So we're going to do first Ian and then Mateo's. Mateo, what is yours? Is yours on a computer or are you just something?
Yeah, mine's on a computer.
Okay. Did you email it to anybody?
No, I was just gonna present it to the class.
Okay. Ian's putting his up on the screen here, so if you have ask everybody to come over to this side of the room so he can show you what he
Not
did.
great. Are you gonna take your stuff? Yeah. You stand up, Anthony. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Go. Oh, maybe not. Oh, look at that. Oh.
Finish your coffee in a minute because he wants to show this.
Yeah. Hold on a sec.
Okay. So my presentation is fairly simple. I sort of gave like visual representation to this particular line. From death, from dark, from deafness, from despair. This light, this light, this word, this joy repairs. So just to show you, from death, from darkness, from deafness, from despair. This life, this light, this word, this joy repairs. I knew it was coming. That's why I did that. It was so stupid. I was like,
The Gospel according to Bob the Builder. All right, I like it. All right, Mateo, you have something for us.
Mine isn't funny, by the way.
That's okay. Doesn't have to be. Does your computer have a
You're
little?
so
If
disappointed.
it has an HDMI output, we can put it up on the screen. If it doesn't,
It does not.
you can just show it to everybody. Okay, bring it over.
It does.
No. Bring it. Bring it over. Okay. Let me just find it.
This one's gonna be amusing.
It's loading.
It's learning.
I'm always like, I'm just waiting for him to go full on and say like, just think that it's my chest.
I did mine on Colossians 1:17. He was before all things, and in him all things hold together.
Can't really see.
Could you put it like on the presentation, like to play it, so that's full screen?
My bad.
No problem. No worries.
You can pass it around if you can.
Yeah.
We could all gather around a table like some sort of cult.
Yeah, we could do that too.
Okay.
Short.
Okay.
Phone away, Pietro, no games, we're back now.
Yeah. In him all things hold together. No, it's just
All right.
Good job, Pietro. Something like that.
I was leaning down, Pietro.
Okay, so come on back to the main table here then.
Oh, nice job, Mateo. Except for I didn't watch
No, Anthony, you're not sitting in Elizabeth's seat.
I'll just take his jacket as a prize.
Okay, sure. Here you go.
Same.
Wait, there's literally over there like, you get pocket. This is not. You should give it to Dave.
On the battle button lost.
And please grab your handout number 20. Handout 20.
Which one is that?
And you have his golf ball too.
The one you got 2 weeks ago because we didn't have class last week. We didn't have class last week because of
It
the
feels so weird.
delay.
AKA
Delay.
Your.
I messed stuff up.
So it's the one that opens. The top of the page is study questions for 2x2. 2x2 is the short story there.
Wait.
The story is only about
We handed this one out last
maybe
Yeah,
two
she handed
thirds.
it out last week.
Were they
Oh, you handed it out
for-
last
were
week?
they for the story? I feel like they didn't like directly relate to it.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of.
Yes, they were to guide your thinking as you approach to the short story. If you guys want to take it in a different direction, that is absolutely fine. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to ask you. We're going to do it this way. Starting here, count off by 4s going down.
Uno, dos,
Praise.
Faith,
4.
Yes.
you're 4.
Yes.
4. I figured this out.
Isaac,
What?
1.
You're 1.
2.
4. 1.
Dose. 3.
Okay.
1 dose. 3.
It's gonna go oh, wait a minute. It's gonna. I think those groups are going to be too small. Let's do it again. Count by 3s.
Uno, dos.
Trace.
Nope. By 3s.
Uno
So change it to 3s.
Uno.
You confused me.
Okay, restart.
So you're 1.
Okay, uno. Dos. Trace.
No, you're 1. You're 1.
Donde está la leche?
That makes you.
I'm
¿Dónde está la
32.
I'm Uno. 2.
All right. So you guys go to corners of the table here. We'll do 1s over here, 2s over there, 3s over here. Okay.
Wait, you moved to me.
Bring your handouts
not
with
Anthony.
you. If you did not read the story, you can start by rereading the story 2 by 2, or if to refresh your memory. Then look at the study questions to guide your conversations. You're going to have about 15 to 20 minutes to do this, and then we're going to come back together. Share what we come up with in our listen, please. Share what we come up with in our groups, and then you're going to get your final assignment for the class. And we're going to talk it through. Okay? So 1, 2, 3. Grab your groups.
What the heck?
Discuss
This isn't.
the short story 2 by 2.
Uno.
One's in this corner.
1s, 2s,
No, 1s are in this
3s.
corner, Petra.
Wait, where's 3s?
There.
I have more kids. Trey.
Yes. Yeah, but we got
Trey way.
stabby kids. That's gonna be really bad.
What?
Oh my god.
We got denied it because
Okay, if you counted correctly, there are 3 groups of 4.
Yes.
1, 2, 3.
You're
1s, 2s, 3s.
You're 3.
Hold on. So me.
Mateo, you're 2.
I am 2.
Yeah, this is 2. That's 2.
Yep.
Elizabeth is 3.
Was it?
Yeah.
Probably. You can come over this group.
You got
3.
Who's sitting
Yeah,
here?
you're 3. You're 3.
Alright, so Ian's sitting here. Yeah.
All right. So please go ahead. Sit down in your group. Sit down in a little circle.
Ben, my side
They want to get further from each other.
You're welcome to go over and use the circular tables.
Okay, I don't want
You've got 15 to 20 minutes to discuss. 15 to 20 minutes to discuss.
There is a knife on the table. Nice. Sit right here. I'm
gonna guess
I want you to listen up, please.
Yeah, those spaceships.
As you begin, please listen up for a second. You're going to be sharing your insights that you come up with in the group. You're going to share to the large group. So please take note. You should have your stuff with you so you can take some notes on this. This will help you with your final assignment. So you want to keep notes for yourself about what you think is important in the discussion. Okay? Go ahead.
So, Isaac, did you just...
Boy, back over here you go.
Yes.
Yeah, what's the difference?
Alright, you want to do some... I tried summarizing it to Pietro.
Yeah, I did the same thing.
I tried to summarize it to Pietro.
Well, Isaac doesn't remember it either.
Yeah, he was like, okay, remember the part of the show again? He was like, just summarize it to me. I was like, it's a short story, just read it.
These 2 women got to heaven, right? So these 2 women get to heaven, but they were enemies that were on earth. They were enemies. and they had the insignia. I don't even know what that is. What is that?
Symbol. Like wearing a cross.
Okay.
Like the rebel flag.
Gotcha. All right. So they had like a symbol
Good
on
one.
their
Good one,
necks,
Anthony. Why are you so
which
smart?
showed that they were enemies, and that's like.
Addie, can I help with something for a minute? What you're doing is right. Let me talk to the whole group for a second. It may help you guys. Before you begin, the two women who are meeting in heaven, they're wearing different insignias, means they're wearing different kinds of crosses. These were two types of Christians who on earth were fighting with each other and maybe killing each other. Okay? That's it. Go ahead.
Maybe I've just understood.
Right, so they were enemies on earth, and then when they got there, they looked at, I think, was it Jesus? Or just, yeah, the Lord. And they were like, oh, I died for you, and she killed us. And, you know, they were just instantly blaming him. And then basically he said, you both belong, he says, you both belong to me, you both gave your lives for me, but if you both belong to me, then you belong to each other as well. And they were still like, taking each other as enemies. So obviously they weren't too happy about that. And then he says, you know, heaven needs to be for them. And they could go in together as joy if they like let go of the
Martyrs.
feelings that they have. And then eventually they talk about it. And then they realized that it, there wasn't really any holding on to it, holding on feelings from earth into heaven. So then they decided to drop it.
You just leave it like that and it'll be okay.
Hand in hand. Like they dropped they still had the thingies, but they dropped the bad feelings from each other.
Martyrs. And I was thinking about them having necklaces that like connect with each other. I felt like they had opposite, like the avatar. Yeah, like opposite, not like ones that connect like opposite necklaces, but I didn't think it was like opposite cross. Like,
Yeah, I thought they were necklaces, not crosses for the whole time.
So it'd be like two different things. It's like two different express discussion on it, just trying. It's supposed to be going through the questions and anything.
Yes, use the questions as a guide to your discussion. Use the reflection questions as a guide to your discussion.
I guess how they were like different Christians, or really?
Well, yeah, because everyone has it.
Right. So like, how does that change someone's opinion? Like, I mean, we're all Christians, but it separates us. Definitely.
Yeah, it's basic. Yeah, like one of the main things over here that like they bring. It can separate you with other Christians. How does a person one predestination and you're necessarily one with predestination refusal.
I mean, of course it's a separation because everybody wants to think that they're right. Like, if they have such different views, then it's going to cause division.
hey, this is really good.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting to like.
Anyway.
We argument discussions and you get to like a bad case with them, like you have a bad case.
Our religion is all about love, but I
They
Like, my grandpa's Catholic movement, and he'll always be like, in your religion, are you this? I'm like, oh, well, same religion. Like, it feels like such a difference just from the little things. And they really are just little things, you know. But it makes people make it so much worse.
I actually have to say that how you say that
Well, I mean, one of the major things like separates Christians is like the doctrine of like predestination and stuff like that. Like that's
the fact that we can,
whether you believe in it or you don't, whether you think whether you think that it's God much more powerful or whether you feel like it's like kind of cheapens him. Like personal opinion. Because I know that we're both ninjas, so we like have basically the same opinion about this. I don't want to hear from you. So anyway,
Yours is huge. Yours is huge. Yeah, when I'm taking it fast. No. It's like
I just know that.
Why'd you breathe? Right?
Yeah, breathe. I don't even know what that is. Yeah, I'm not.
It's sweet.
it's hard to keep them all even.
yeah, predestination.
I think you just don't like your
Like does God choose our fate? I mean, it's
I know what
deeper than that, right? Yeah.
I know. Well,
He's not being involved. He didn't text them.
I don't want to speak for my church here.
But like personally, like what do you?
And so I texted him about
Well, obviously everyone gets a chance. Like, you were born.
Next
If
question.
any of your groups need help, just flag me down if you have questions about something.
How God looks.
How does it unite us with?
I mean, it's a hard question. Like predestination is hard. Like,
I personally always feel like whenever it's brought up, it always just kind of like makes God, like, for lack of a better term, a bully. It's like
Yeah.
you're
And you're going down. Yeah, it's
exactly. It's like you're
weird.
not even born. It's like, okay, I like this one. He's going to this pocket
Yeah.
over here. Like this one, his nose is just a little bit crooked. Maybe that would be
Yeah, basically. I mean, honestly, I feel like personally, I don't even really know like the Lutheran, but I feel like that is very aggressive and like mean as a God, and I don't see God.
Well, the idea
And I
with
feel
that is
like
that basically it gives God absolute power. Like, you know, you don't necessarily need to choose everything, but like, yeah, that's like more or less how it's viewed. One of these views out there.
I feel like it's like we can affect it, but he
Depends
knows.
on
Like not that he
how-
chose it himself, but he knows
how
that.
you choose to look
Well,
at
one thing about all of this is that with predestination and Arminianism, they both place God sort of on a timeline. Like, they place it in, like, existing within time, whereas, like, Lutherans generally believe that God sort of exists outside of time. Like, if we were, like, say on, like, a 2D sort of, like, basically, we see the world in 2D, we can only see what's directly ahead or behind us. We can see the whole world from, like, an outside view, like, a whole painting on a wall, basically.
So every single person, when they're born, when they die, like he can see everything.
Yeah, he sees
I
it.
feel like
So that's what I believe. Like
one way it could be
even
done
though
is
he didn't necessarily say, you are going to hell and I'm putting you in hell when you die, I don't care. It's more of like he knows what's
he'll see how
Yeah, he knows what's going to happen, and he can
powerful
see it all
God is,
happen.
and throughout all of it, he could do whatever he wants. So he could
so really, this is a really confusing topic.
It is, it really is, because
There's a
then
reason
like
why
you
it's one of the
say,
main
Powers.
yeah, but I
That's
don't understand why it would like
You don't think he did?
cause people to be like,
Basically, it sort of like makes you into like almost an elitist group. Like, it's like I know that I'm one of the. I don't think that they are over there.
yeah.
But I know that I am.
But I feel like it's very confusing and it can get deep, but it's not big enough to
Take school, everything out of my pocket.
risk
Has
it.
in your mind.
Like, I feel like people make the idea
What
worship than like God. They make it more about like predestination. Who believes in it, who doesn't, that's more important than like your connection with God.
Yeah, you not to look like you know.
And that's a big problem. I mean, you see that with so many things. Science, money,
Moral system.
just general ideas.
Like
It's not, I mean, I don't think it's very healthy to put anything above God like that. Especially when it's causing such bloodshed and division.
And it's not like rules,
All
it's
God's people.
it's things to keep us like pure as Christians and make Christians as good.
And that like,
If
you're the second question, like how is that our responsibility to,
You're more like
not even just like non-Christians, but everybody else. We shouldn't force things if they're unwilling, because then that's just gonna cause more problems.
More
That
than
3%.
let people do this, let
But,
people do that.
you know, of course, you can try and influence people.
Yeah, absolutely. You're always welcome to like debate things. You don't want to force it on them.
I mean, now, I don't know, the general topic. So upset. You can't really say anything, but you can try without being aggressive. I think that's the biggest then it's not harming anything. And if they made up their mind and they really
And like, especially when you're talking to
are
another
gonna stick with
Christian,
what
you
they
kind of
believe,
get
then
to do one
you
thing.
can't do anything else.
Obviously, a person will go there and start using other person's
Oh, it's like you talk to them yourself, and then you talk to
You think, oh, you have more.
like, and then you talk to the church, and then if they don't agree with the church, then they're better off. Like it's
So it's probably
I was
wrong
actually thinking of the one,
and
like, you
easier
go,
to change someone who's not religious or not Christian to come across with someone who's a different Christian view
but if no one in that town
because they're so set on those beliefs. Yeah.
Two of the people I work with most of the time now.
because it's out of your hands.
Support on your side, but if they just refuse to believe it,
You know?
can't do it.
I'm so lost right now.
How about like with the same, like as Christians, like it says, should they remain separate if they disagree or?
It's good, everyone else is like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
What's over the
Yeah.
there's things we're teaching is like, I usually freezing here and there. So I have the same thing, I'm up teaching like 5 years. As soon as I sit down, it was like, yeah, I don't know.
Collectively,
It's been on for Tuesday.
especially.
Yeah.
Because you know, like, you know, you disagree about this and this, but frankly,
So I might as well for Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Exactly.
at the core, we believe in this.
Yeah.
And of course, not everybody is gonna like
Well, that's actually.
get along.
It's easier to
with
sustain.
people.
Yeah, you
You
ask.
can't force
Yeah,
that,
yeah, easier to sustain.
but you can like, you can still cooperate,
World Series.
tolerate it at least. And then just get together to do simple things
Right,
like
true, yes, you wouldn't want to turn it into the evening.
Yeah, I mean, soon we're
because I don't think anybody really disagrees with
I'm up
that.
here for two.
That's true, that's very true. But not for the evening classes, it's for the summer. I'm sure Mike
So I mean, look at it,
It's a big spot on the year.
I mean,
interesting to see whether he continues that in the fall or whether he wants to shift to after
concert,
Beth.
that's really one of
Oh, yeah.
See how we want to do it.
I don't, there's some people will have very,
Year.
Like,
Start with stuff like the following year.
like, there's still like,
Two things you can back
it is like on the edge, just off, like,
He might just kind of try to take
things that like separate them distinctly from Christianity.
That's
and
what
like,
I
what
really
are
want
you
to push
doing?
you to do.
Are you forcing each other's opinions, or are you just trying to, like,
Unless, of course,
have?
that's my.
Yeah, I think I'd be good sharing those ideas.
Yeah, I mean, pick one, you'd also back otherwise, it's just come down some.
Oh, that's true, too, yeah.
All of them go to church and.
If he wants to keep it
whenever
where it
he goes
is.
to church, he just goes there.
Very true, very true, very true, very true.
Okay.
Okay, about 3 more minutes.
He's never gonna.
The church, like,
no-
definitely, like you said, he had key things like,
Yeah, it's,
you know,
mainly because his mother and his brother died.
I feel like things that Thomas has said,
Yeah.
They
because
died.
all Christians believe that Jesus is the Lord, so then that
What are your plans?
pretty important.
The kids present their papers.
So anything he said, said
I'm not
to
gonna have
do.
him present unless there's like some really extraordinary papers I want to
Yeah,
go through.
I mean, it happens sometimes. Like he's a full grown adult now.
It'd be nice.
I think it's
We got every
yeah,
semester.
it might be wrong.
Students got their papers,
Yeah,
like
so
sermons that
basically,
we
it's like, God, that's like a wife or something like that.
You really
All the souls come
allow
from.
them to, like, before it
That's,
leaves
I don't even know what that means.
Well, it says God's bride is the church.
you know,
Oh,
church.
the church
church is a woman.
It identifies as a woman. It is a proven fact.
I really should have figured that you would work on that point.
That's funny.
How about the,
And then you have people wanting to come in and hear what's going on.
lost that, okay. How about the questions like at the final? Because I know a lot of people have very different views of what the final judgment is.
Final judgment is going to kind of be almost like how I imagine like you're reviewing for like a college sort of thing, like God, like you're just sitting there with Jesus and he has like a list of things that you know. It's like
So long,
I know, like
yeah.
It's gonna be endless.
It would just keep going.
it just keeps going.
Yeah.
Alright, so you were a pretty bad person.
You just be sitting there cringing.
Oh, that is like
I
God,
don't
that is a
even
lot
know
of
how to-
drinking, man.
So much.
What? You murdered someone. No.
He's like, no.
The hell you go.
I just have to imagine that it's like that sort of.
Yeah. Like I feel like also at the same time, even though necessarily mean to be doing it, like the disappointment would be showing. And or you would just expect to be disappointed.
Yes.
So it would be like when you do something wrong and your parents, you're like, I'm not mad, but I'm disappointed. You're just sitting there like
Which
breaking.
is so much worse. We
Yeah.
all agree that that is just so much worse.
Yep. So like what were some questions?
Specific question, like,
I'd say that the important one is
I had a few. And I could.
All right, about one more minute.
I'm very upset with myself. Like when I do things, I'll be like,
communion is more like a.
why? So then I think of things like this, like, you're gonna be happy that you did that when you're being judged. Is it really worth it?
oh yeah.
So,
Yeah, I do the same.
are you proud of the life you lived? Did you take it for granted? Did you follow me to the best of your ability? Do you truly wish to stay with me for eternity? And are you truly sorry?
So we can separate on that issue, like,
The fact that he can like feel, like he can sense your,
but we can still.
and I feel like the do you truly wish to stay with me? Like because.
Like that's
Scary.
Yeah, because if you're like I would hope, like that's
change the way we view each other.
just like if you get to heaven, like gates, and you're being judged, are you still being influenced by human sin? So are you still desiring sin? You know, like because with the devil, obviously things.
I'm gonna put that down.
No, hell is atrocious, but like, are you still not wanting to be perfect?
All right, I'm going to ask everyone to come back to the big table now. Grab your chairs if you carried some over with you, so everyone's got a place to sit. Come on back.
Think about. It's very upsetting.
Outside.
Here,
That I knew that was gonna be that. I saw that and I was like, that group right there. I was like, that's not gonna be good.
Yeah, it looked like you guys were doing well.
Of course. No, Which is the heart over to
All right. So I started with the questions to these were just to guide your reflections. They weren't meant to like limit you, but just to get you started. We started with very concretely where we left off at the last class, the predestination question, how it separates Christians, how it gathers them together. Even the fact that they're asking that question is kind of a way of uniting them, right? Like how many, if you're not a Christian, you're not even going to ask the question about predestination, okay? A Muslim, this is not a question for a Muslim because God, Allah is absolutely sovereign, and on the last day he decides what happens to you and you have no say and your life has no influence. I have this on good authority because the Imam told me this, okay? So So Christians that's one way you're united. You're asking the same question, even if you're coming to two different answers. So going on to the second question there, what did you guys come up with? What kind of responsibilities do you have to Christians who you disagree with? And how is it different or the same as what responsibilities you might have to non-Christians?
I honestly feel like it's kind of harder to influence people, like other Christians, than it is non-Christians, unless they're like
On the edge. Or like.
unless they're like
rethinking
unless
kind of
they're
thing?
like atheists till the day that they die, you know.
Uh-huh.
But if they're kind of just they don't really know where they're at, and they
Mm-hmm.
just don't really think about it much. It's, in my opinion, much easier to influence them than somebody who's already made up their mind.
Sure. Or to be influenced in kind, right? I mean, part of the reality of communications is that our ability to influence other people is directly related to how easily they can influence us. Mm-hmm. Are we taking their questions on good faith and thinking about them, or are we just thinking of a way I want to respond? You know, oh, there's the question I was waiting for. Boom! Oh yeah, I got the knockout punch, right? That's YouTube. It's so-and-so destroys somebody. You know, I mean, it's all those kind of things, right? Yeah. Definitely more easier. What else did you guys come up with? I heard there was good conversation around all the tables. I was kind of eavesdropping. So. Yeah.
We said that basically we have the responsibility as Christians to like have proper discussion and to like kind of at least, if not come to a meeting of the minds, at least come to a reconciliation of the heart, so that we can't so that we don't continue fighting about things aggressively.
Okay.
Which we don't necessarily have with non-believing Christians.
Okay. That's a good point.
Also, that was great information about Richard Dawkins, if you wouldn't mind sharing that with the class.
Oh yes, I can share that then later. Yeah. Richard Dawkins recently, just so y'all know Richard Dawkins. He's in your quotes from earlier in the year about, and he kind of runs down the character of God. He has now publicly come out and said he is a non-practicing, non-believing Christian. Mm-hmm. Meaning that he believes what Christians believe about the moral world, like about our responsibility to, and he's recognizing that it comes from Christianity, even though he doesn't believe it personally. He doesn't believe in Christianity, but he agrees with us on Jesus' teachings about caring for the poor and loving one another and all that kind of stuff. So I just thought you'd all find that interesting. Apparently,
He's the one who told God a bully.
What?
In our one quote that he was reading, like when we were we'll do through God, that was so funny.
Yeah.
At least he's honest, though.
Yeah, exactly.
True.
He's being intellectually honest about it, which is great. But it's a huge difference to say he's a Christian because he agrees with the character of the moral teachings of the God he's running down in the quote you guys have is pretty significant shift since he published that book. But to give an example of this our responsibilities towards non-Christians or towards other Christians, two of my closest colleagues I work with locally in our community are Mennonites. Mennonites are Anabaptists, means they don't baptize babies. Lutherans do. We have different views of predestination and free will and a couple of other things. And in the 1500s, Lutherans burned Mennonites at the stake. Not many of them, but enough that it's a horrible blot on our history. So to have us working together in the community is a huge, huge change, and represents very better the kind of thing you guys were just talking about in this corner here about Christians coming together in love, so we're not fighting one another. Yeah. How about I heard some conversation at all the tables a little bit about what separates, what unites us. What are our responsibilities about whether we should be in the same churches, different churches? How do we work with each other? What kind of stuff did you guys come up with?
I mean, something that we came up with was if like two like groups are having like a disagreement about something, it's better to like have them go to one church, because then they can talk about why they agree or why they disagree with their points, and then they can see like what points actually make sense.
Okay.
And then they can like come to a compromise of like, okay, so this does make sense, but this part doesn't. And it like can make everyone like have like they'd see what like the pros and cons are about both sides.
Yeah, keep the conversation going. Yeah.
Our group came to the conclusion that basically it's good to have partially separated churches. Like, churches shouldn't, exclude themselves from the company of other types of churches, but to have them all packed into one space until they can fight it out, basically, could result in a lot of problems.
Okay.
So yes, we should have discourse, and I think that it's important to I think the point where Christians should separate are like on fundamental but not deal-breaking issues, where like, say our views on communion or something like that, where
differences in how you worship
Mhm.
is one of the things we talk about.
Okay, style of worship. Yeah, say more about that.
So, like, you know, how you take communion or baptism or, you know, depending on what you sing or if you sing at all, you know, there
Well,
are...
we come to the recognition that all of us recognize that
Yes.
it's important, but we have different perspectives.
Yeah, there's different ways of doing it.
Sure. Sure. Great.
By the way, the hat is fire.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had a pastor a couple of years ago. So this will tell you how many years ago. Our kids were playing together on the playground. So my kids were small. So we were talking, and he was asking about that, like how Lutherans get along with other Christians and how we talk about things. And I was explaining where we're at, and he said, "Wow," he said, you know, in my tradition, we don't even get along with each other. Pastor to pastor. So it's interesting. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I feel like a lot of people can be really stubborn. So if they've been practicing this religion, they were raised like that, and they don't even want to learn other things. Sometimes they don't want to listen, and they refuse to listen. So it could be putting everyone in like one church, all the different kinds of Christians. It could be bad. Yeah.
Yeah, it could be like sometimes we need to like just come back to where we're comfortable and then go out and engage the conversation, get a little uncomfortable in the conversation, you know, and then go back and I need to take a breath, you know, kind of thing.
It'd be like feeling like enemies all around you, or even they're going to attack you next. So like being able to retreat into your corner for a few minutes and just regroup and reprocess your thoughts is often a good thing. And also a degree of separation can often help you to process things better than if you're in the heat of battle all the time.
Okay. Well, and that's an interesting, all the metaphors you're using there, battle, attack, this kind of stuff, maybe points to the kind of conversations we want to be having, right? Where we're not trying to like, let me put the smackdown on, you know, that's a different thing than can we get together and have a conversation. And there's some really bad YouTube channels, and then there's some good YouTube channels where you see Christians of different perspectives engaging one another in thoughtful dialogue and sometimes in not so thoughtful dialogue. Those of you who were here for the Genesis debates of a couple years ago, and you set all that stuff up, it's kind of, there's a new book out with 3 different opinions on the book of Genesis. Earth created in 6 literal days, Earth created over time, and the 6 days are symbolic, and another opinion beyond that. And there are all these 3 Christians having a dialogue in the book. You can find on YouTube, if you do that same search, you'll mostly find people screaming at each other. Okay, so how do we have talks together is a big thing. How about in your own church? If you find your convictions beginning to change, either to another form of Christianity or something like that, do you have a responsibility to stay and engage your fellow Christians in that conversation? Do you go to your pastor and talk to them? Do you have to change churches? What just your perspectives on that?
Like, I feel like you should try. You should try as hard as you can to, you know, influence them in the way that you feel is right and like that feels right.
Okay.
And you can usually tell. I mean, and humans are stubborn. We don't want to know, but deep down you really do. You know. And so you try to the best of your ability, and then when you can't anymore, it's not in your hands.
Anyone else have some insights? Some people haven't talked yet.
I feel like you should like go to your pastor too.
Okay.
Like we've had a few like members just leave and like they've like cursed out our pastor on like Facebook and stuff like that.
Oh jeez.
They have to like, I feel like they have to understand. Also, the pastor should understand why they like were convicted of like a different thing or something that they don't agree with or don't understand.
Right. Yep, definitely. I one of the podcasts I listen to regularly is a bunch of Reformed theologians, so they're Calvinists. They have a very particular perspective on predestination, of course. It was very interesting for me to hear them talking about Arminianism, but saying, the thing to remember is that this is an in-house discussion. That even though I don't agree with my Wesleyan brothers on free will, this is a discussion amongst family members. Like, we're still in the same family. And John Calvin, of course, stabbed somebody for disagreeing with him theologically. So that shows growth and change and evolution, and a maturity that's come with centuries of conversations. So good. I want to share with you guys how impressed I was watching the 4 groups, because you were really randomized today. You guys are having much better discussions now than you were having like before Christmas. A fruit of all the other work you're doing with Mrs. Jenkins, but also that you're thinking deeply about these conversations. I loved that as I went around to the groups, there were very few people not saying anything at all. Everyone had at least some opinion to jump in. And I thought that was fantastic. That's setting you up for your final assignment for me. Part of what we're trying to do in the co-op here is help prepare you guys for life. And it's not just in terms of like what you're thinking, but also your ability to do the work. So no matter what field you go into, I don't care what you do next, if you go into the military, if you go into a manual labor career, if you go off to college, every profession, everything you'll do for the rest of your life is going to have crunch times. Your dad's a baker. I am quite certain there are days when he knows there's like 1 million people coming in to buy donuts or cakes or whatever, and he's got to stay late and bake, Finals week is like that. In college, back when Mrs. Jenkins and I were at undergraduates, we had a thing called blow-off hours, because it's 24-hour quiet hours from the time finals week starts. No sound at all on campus. And they gave us a half hour to make as much noise as we wanted to, and the campus went crazy. Like, music's blasting out. Everyone's got their dorm windows open, the music's blasting. We're having sofa races down the hall. We're stealing stuff out of the social halls and racing each other, doing crazy stuff, to blow off the stress. But it's like that. You get to finals week, and every course you're taking has a big final or something to do, and it's all due the same week. So that's why everyone's stressed. So part of what we're trying to do is help you guys prepare your emotional muscles for some of that. So this is your final assignment for me. We will not have class next week. I will be off at a pastor's retreat in Maryland. But what I will be doing is I'm going to ask you guys to send me your rough draft of your final assignment, because I'm going to mark it up and send it back to you so that you can make whatever changes you want to make, and that's what goes in your portfolio for your homeschool teacher to grade it, okay? Whoever does your evaluations for you. I'm going to pass this around now. But before I do, I want you to listen to my recommendation very carefully. There's a short story on this one by the same person who wrote 2 by 2, but it's a much longer short story. I'm going to suggest to you strongly that you get together in groups and read it and discuss it in groups. Your paper is not a group paper. Your final paper is to be written because it's your personal reflections. You're going to pull together everything you have for this year. If you've lost handouts, the handouts are now on a Google Drive link that Mrs. Jenkins can send you. I've already sent it to her. So you guys can pull up the ones you lost. It's an integrative paper, so I'm going to explain to you the paper in a minute after I pass this around. As this is being passed, you can just listen to I'm just going to read what I wrote for the intro here, because this is going to guide your reading of the story. I believe you guys are up to this, or I wouldn't give it to you. And your discussions in small group today verified it for me. Okay, so the last reflection on the page you just looked at was, what sort of questions do you anticipate being asked at the final judgment? The whole point of developing a Christian worldview is to learn how to live a Christian life. This is not academic stuff for you guys. Okay, you're all Christians. How do you live a Christian life? You want to live a life rooted in and giving expression to our faith, that Jesus Christ is the Christ, the Son of the living God. We do this so that our faith may be truly alive, and at our lives' end we may hear from Jesus the words, "Well done, good and faithful servant." Without a Christian worldview, though we trust in the forgiveness of God through Jesus, we cannot hope to even begin to live a life that's pleasing to Him. However, developing that worldview, which is the work of a lifetime, is not the same as applying that worldview to our lives, both as individuals and as a community. In the following piece of historical fiction, so you guys know what historical fiction is, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. You will see one author's speculation on how a real historical incident was resolved. Dr. Heinrich Wilson is a devotee of Augustine's theological work, has read about him extensively, so it makes the story really interesting. She spent a couple of years buried in Augustine's work and in his life study. Augustine is one of the most important figures in history. His thoughts not only form the foundation of much Catholic and Protestant theology, they form the basis of much of the thinking and laws in the modern world. But before he became a saint, Augustine was a really good sinner. As he autobiographically noted, his constant prayer for many years was, "Lord, make me chaste, but not yet." When he decided to become a pastor and a theologian, he left his longtime lover and their child. We do not know what happened to them from historical documents. That's what the story is about. But not just that, it's also about Augustine's personal spiritual growth. While Augustine was brilliant in his thinking, his application of his increasingly Christian worldview, because he didn't convert till late in life. He was in his 30s when he became a Christian. So his worldview had to change and grow. It was a slower process for him as it is for all of us. So, as you read the story, to think about this. What is Augustine's key insight into himself at the end of the story? What is his lament? What is his joy? What do you think was his chief sin, and how might realizing that and repenting of it sooner have led to a different life for him, for Lucunda, that's his lover, and for their child? Okay, so this is a piece of historical fiction that's kind of looking at some of those questions, but it's going to serve as a jumping off point for you guys. So if you turn to the back page, you will see your final assignment. I'm going to let you read this stuff up here is to help you write the assignment, but 3 to 5 page paper, double spaced, 12-point font, a reflection, thinking about the questions you'll read above. Use your handouts from the entire school year. And use quotes to show your understanding and application. Quotes can be up to 30% of the paper, but not more. Okay? When you use quotes, show that you understand them by pointing to their application in either your understanding or your life. Remember, this is an integrative paper. So most of the finals you will take in college are cumulative. You will take everything you learned for 16 weeks and throw it together into a pot, and you'll be expected to answer whatever you need to do on the final paper or final test. The point is for you to pull together all you've learned in order to make your own understanding cohesive and coherent. I really truly find that I don't know what I think till I can say it to someone else or write it to someone else. Otherwise, it's just a jumble in my head and I keep circling around. This is going to help you pull it together. Remember when we talked about story? This is to make a story that makes sense. A story you can tell yourself and others to help you be better understood. You are a mystery even to yourself in part. Only God knows you completely. This is to help you understand a little bit more about yourself and help others understand you too. Okay? So this is I'm going to ask you to send this to me in an electronic form so I can mark it up. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you my email address right now. So you can send it directly to me. Okay? And it's just pastor at Holy Cross Nazareth.org. So whenever you get it done, I'll get it back to you as quickly as I can. We are traveling this coming weekend. We're going to see my brother, he and his wife are getting ready to have a baby. So I will get it back to you as quickly as I can, and then you'll have as much time as you want to revise it. But this is for you to think through where you're at. So all the handouts are there. You've got all the quotes from the year. You can pull your own quotes in that you find helpful from, I don't care if it's from memes or from the Bible, whatever you do to pull it together to help you put this together, all right?
So we're basically writing a short story about ourselves?
In a way, yeah. This is my story about myself. How do I understand God? How do I understand me? What does that mean about my relationships or how I think about my life, how I live my life, how I make my choices, okay? All right.
Oh, all right.
Okay. It's big, but this is to help you. A lot of you are facing life. It's like that light at the end of the tunnel is the train that's coming straight at you. You're getting to the end of high school, or you're starting to think about what you want to do with your lives. This will help. All of this will help you with making those choices. All right. All right. Have a great lunch. I'll see you in 2 weeks.